Welcome friends, this is Will Whitfield with W3 Productions. It's been a while since I posted, but I wanted to share with you my updated workflow from getting things from Daz to Blender without all the unnecessary complications that I've had in the past. I will warn you that some of this is a paid add-on, and that even with the paid add-on, we're going to do some post work with bringing our animations to our Daz characters in Blender. The two choices we usually use for going from Daz to Blender, other than using FBX, is the Daz to Blender bridge, which is free from the Daz store, or using the diffeomorphic Daz Importer, and this is the website for that. Both of them have their pros and cons. For this walkthrough, this is not a step-by-step tutorial, but for this walkthrough, I use the diffeomorphic Daz Importer for a couple of reasons. One, because of skin textures, and two, because of some of the add-ons in the importer that I'll show you in a moment. It helps me with facial animation and a couple of other things. Then I have other reasons as well. So let's go ahead and go to Blender, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So here are two examples of the same character. They were based on a character that's called Stylish Male, Genesis 8 character available in the Daz store. And this, let's see if this pops up a little bit. This is what the character originally looks like. Again, more tannish skin. And what they do, they say they have three different skin textures for it. But what it is you have the same texture image for the character with, and then this base color is changed here. So the issue I have is that when we import it using the Daz to Blender bridge, it doesn't recognize, it recognizes the texture image, but not this. So what happens is if I go to, well, first I want to try to go to the look dev, and then if that works, we can go to cycles. It won't keep that setting, so I would have to go to each material and try to modify it to get that same skin texture back. That is not going to be the case with the diffeomorphic Daz Importer version, which is here on the left. We see we have that same skin texture that we had in Daz Studio, where we don't have it here in Look Dev on the Daz to Blender Bridge version. I'm going to go briefly to Cycles, and we see the same thing. Also, the hair is a little less visible for some. I know the hair is close shaved, but I'm not sure what's going on there. We see it here in we see it here in solid mode, but not in cycles. It's weird. Also, if I go to orthographic view, for whatever reason, the characters are different heights. I'm not sure why. So again, we're just going to deal with the diffeomorphic one for now. Maybe a year from now it'll be different. Who knows? So let's go to Daz root. I'm going to delete hierarchy, and then let's go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup. Recursive, unused data blocks, clear all that up. Let's go ahead and select this character and put it back at the world of origin, like so. So this is the version we're going to use. We need to go ahead and prep it for using the Auto Rig Pro. When we import our Mixamo file or any BVH file, usually those animations will come with the first frame being in a T pose. As we know with Daz characters, they start out in an A pose. So when we use this Auto Rig add-on, it is suggested that we have our characters in the same rest pose. So you can either set the T pose in Genesis, maybe save it as a pose preset, and then import your character that way, or we can do it in Blender. I'm going to go ahead and do it in Blender, and then maybe you can save that later on as a pose preset or a pose. So what I'm going to do is go to pose mode and select the left shoulder bend, hit RR, Z to rotate it on the local Z axis. Okay, actually, sorry, RZZ. And then I'm going to hit 45.61. I'm not sure what I got that figure from. I got it from a Daz forum somewhere. Sorry, I don't know who to attribute that to. Same thing here, RZZ, negative 45.61. And then for the legs, RZZ6, RZZ negative 6, enter. And we more or less have our T-pose. Not perfect, but pretty close. Now we can go to the importer plugin and go to corrections, and we're going to hit apply rest pose. So this will be our new rest pose. We know it's done when basically all the character material meshes in Armature are highlighted. While we're looking at the Armature, I want to point out something that will give us a problem here in a moment. The Daz Armatures are a little bit different in that they have different bones for twisting limbs and bending limbs. Let's go to pose mode to show what I'm talking about. So if we go back to the left shoulder bend, we can hit RR, and we can see the range of motion that it gives. It basically bending, rotating the limb within its constraints. But the left shoulder twists are basically twisted within the socket without actually moving the limb. Same thing for the forearm. Only one range of motion there. That right there. But the twist, again, twisting it kind of at the joint. And we get the same issue here with the legs or the thighs. This can go all around, but this bone deals with the twisting right there. And the issue is that a lot of other armatures, this would all be one bone for the thigh, and these two bones would be one bone for the upper arm, and then these two would be one bone for the forearm, and all the actions, twisting and bending, would be applied to the same bone. So we may miss some posing when we apply a pose, but there are some ways to fix that, and we'll go over that a little bit later on. Also, while we're here in the diffeomorphic importer, some of the other reasons why I like using this one, because of some new features. I remember we imported all these morphs for face units, expressions, visemes. So if you wanted to import a Moho file from like Papagayo, you could do that. But what I do is go to face expressions, and we see we have two options here. Import a face cap file. So if you remember my video or any video on face cap, it works on iOS with the iPhone 10 or higher, or a iPad 3rd generation or later. You can import those files directly here. You don't have to import them into Daz Studio anymore. You can do the same thing with Live Link from Epic Games. So you can import that file as a CSV file, I believe. You can import that here. It's another reason I like using this add-on. Moving right along, we're focusing on using the Auto Rig Pro. So we have our Daz character already set up in a T-pose. Let's go ahead and import our FBX file to get our Mixamo animation in here. So let's go to FBX from import. Let's locate our file. I'm going to use this walking animation. So let's go do FBX import. And it shouldn't take too long because it's a rather simple mesh. So actually this did not come in as a T-pose. But if we go to edit mode, I'm gonna hit tab for edit, we see that it is in a T-pose there. It's also recommended that our armatures are relatively the same size. So, you know, sometimes BVH files come in like 10 times as high. So you want to shrink them. So I'm going to do a little bit shrinking here, not a whole lot. Go back to tab mode, just a tad bit more. And that's, I think that should be close enough. And just go down the timeline right quick to show you the animation. So now that we see the action, let's go ahead and see if we can retarget it to our Daz character. Let's go over to the Auto Rig Pro. We won't need this first section. We have 4 sections: Pro, Smart, Remap, and Export. We actually need the Remap section. The first input field is our source armature, so the character or armature that's animated, which is our Mixamo character, that is called armature. We usually are going to click in place option so that the pelvis stays in place. We can also, if we have multiple source animations, we could configure that here, but we're not. So the target armature is the character we want to animate, which is the Genesis 8 character, and mine is called Stylized Male Genesis 8 Male. Now earlier we just resized this armature in order to have them to be the relatively same scale. You could try to use this auto scale button and it'll try to scale them similarly, but I didn't have a lot of success for that, so that's why I do it manually. The next thing you need to do is compile a list of bones matching one bone from one character to another as best as you can. This add-on will try to do that for you, and I'll click that now. In this case, it doesn't do it very well at all, probably because of the name conventions between the two armatures. So on the left we have the source, on the right we have the target. On the left we have the Mixamo armatures, and we have none for the target bones. So what we can do is, what you're going to do the first time around is do it at all the bones manually. And as you can see, there are a lot of bones. All the limbs, all the fingers, finger joints, and like that. It'll be very tedious, but what you can do after you're finished is export that matching and use it later. So for example, I'm going to do a couple of these. Mixamo head, we're going to go down here and search for the bone that we need to match it with. So head, in this case, we're going to do, for that we'll do hips, and sometimes they're not always named the same on different armatures, so you want to be aware of that. And what you can do is, you know, click on the armature and click on which bone you're trying to find, and go from there and try to match, see what's in the same location. So you do that manually for all of your bones that match. Not all of them will match. For example, the Mixamo has 4 bones for each finger, and the Daz character, I believe, only has 3, so some will be skipped. And also the Mixamo has a head bone at the top of the head that doesn't really seem to do anything. If I do pose mode, it doesn't do anything there. The edges of the fingers, let me see if I can get to one. Here's a bone at the edge of the fingers, number 4. Doesn't seem to do a lot. It's more of a target than an actual bone that moves anything, so I did not retarget that. So again, you would do this manually, and then you would hit export and save that setting to something that makes sense, like Mixamo to Genesis or something like that. And then later on, when you do it again, you can import. So you would import, I say mine called Mixamo to Genesis 8. Now you see that all these bones are now matched appropriately. And you have a few that are not, like this top end head that I just mentioned, and then the ends of the fingers are not matched. Very important to note is that the hips, they need to be set as root. And at the same time, the instructions for the Auto Rig Pro say to mark the feet as IK. I don't do that because I find that that causes some stretchiness in the feet of my character, so I leave that off. And I usually get pretty good results. So then what you would do with all this set up, you make sure that all these match as they should. You click on retarget, and then you want to make sure you have the right frame range selected, and this says linear for keyframe interpolation, and hit OK. This will take probably like 2 minutes or so, so I'll come back when this is finished. Okay, mine took about a minute or less than a minute to do. The length of time this takes is largely dependent on the complexity of your scene and how many keyframes are in your animation. So probably more so the number of keyframes than anything else. You can tell it's done when that window that was up here has disappeared and your armature has taken the same pose as the source armature. So I'm going to try to get rid of the meshes for the Mixamo animation and just leave the armature. We can see that most everything matches pretty well except for maybe the hands. And I'm just going to scroll up the timeline and we can see that the animations match. Now, given what I said earlier about the twisting and bending bones, sometimes this doesn't match very well, or maybe the animation itself is faulty somehow. So let's say, for example, that this arm was swinging too close to the body and was actually clipping with the body. We can use something called the Blender NLA, the nonlinear animator or animation, to correct that. So let's pretend, for example, our arm is too close. So what we would do is we select our armature and go to the animation workspace. Let's go to object mode, select that. And we change our dope sheet from dope sheet editor to the action editor. And we'll open another pane as well. We're going to switch this to the nonlinear animation. And there's a button called push down. What this would do is take all the current keyframes and make that into an action. It's kind of similar to what would be a motion in iClone or an action in the animate tool in Daz Studio. And that'll make that one solid action, and then we can change that action with additional keyframes to edit our motion. So we see the keyframes are now gone. It's all in this action here in the NLA add-on. And we can move it, we can duplicate it, we can get it to repeat, so forth and so on. There's other tutorials that can explain that, but I just want to show. Let me get rid of this one just for that was the keyframes for the Mixamo armature. Don't want to cause any confusion. So let's say this arm was too close, for example. You want it to swing wider out. So what I will do is select that bone. I'll make sure everything else is deselected, and I want it to swing further out. So I'm gonna hit RZZ and swing it out like that. Let me see what it looks like. Okay. want to get the, I don't want to put keyframes on all the well, I might have to. So I'm going to insert keyframe and do it for a rotation. So now I'm going to go through our animation. It does basically the same except for it's further out. In the same way, let's say we wanted to use this animation, but we want the arm. Let's see if we can make it go straight up. See, the rotation limits might prohibit me from doing this. Yeah, there are rotation constraints. You might not be able to go straight up. Okay, I won't be able to go straight up, but let's say, okay, for example, we want the arm to be straight out, because that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to put a keyframe for that forearm bend, and then one more for the shoulder, basically overriding what we had before. So now we can modify that action without redoing a bunch of keyframes. And that's partially what we can do to correct any other issues we have of importing motions and making them fit better to our purposes, because we're using pre-made motion capture files. So that's pretty much my workflow nowadays, and it may change a couple months from now depending on how different plugins work out, but just wanted to share this with you. Hopefully this has been helpful in your Daz to Blender journeys, and basically streamlining your workflow for producing animation. Thanks for watching. Have a blessed day.